Nah,
saw,
you good.
what is it, Live Rescue?
Yeah.
And maybe those guys were messing up.
Really? I haven't watched it in a while.
Oh, Live Rescue, so you did watch
I
it.
did watch it.
I
took a
love it.
suggestion. But don't get me wrong, I find it hilarious, especially the firefighter crew going up to the guy and they're like, where does it hurt? And he's like, bullet hole. That was hilarious. But they're making
Yeah,
some
Live
mistakes.
Rescue is
That,
everything.
all that is just, you know, the fluff of,
Yeah.
you know, that's how come I can't watch it. I can't watch stuff that.
I mean, I'll have
you
a
know,
laugh, it'll teach you how to do things wrong.
The night,
Yeah, you know.
night watches is like real live stuff.
I mean, if it's
I like
paramedics,
that
I mean, I'll check it out.
I send it to you.
What's it called?
But anyone on
I
camera,
think
you gotta
it's
wonder why
Night
that's
Watch?
messing with them.
Night Watch is really good.
I don't think I would have a hard time
It's legit.
focusing on.
And,
It's
Oh,
on,
really?
I know it's on Hulu.
What is?
yeah,
Night Watch.
Oh,
It's on
cool.
YouTube.
Good, yeah.
I send it
I was about to say, I don't do cable, I just stream it.
yeah, I don't got cable.
I got BET Plus. I got BET Plus.
Okay, so, you know, kind of spread out a little bit. So chapter, I think, 2 in your book is over the wellness or workforce safety and the wellness of the EMT. I want to kind of spend a little bit of time with you this morning, especially about death and the dying of patients and having to deal with family members and things like this, because this is something that you have to deal with sometimes on a daily basis. And I'm here to tell you, I don't particularly agree with the book to a degree, because it just briefly mentions it on a page of, hey, death happens, and hey, this is how you deal with the family, and they move on. Because I think that they need to spend a little bit more time on that, considering, again, people call 911 because they're having their worst day, not their best day. And when we deal with death and dying, there's certain stages that you have to recognize that the family's currently going through in order to know how to console them and how to help them accept the fact that their family member's dying or is dead, and you now have live patients to contend with, not the dead person anymore to some degree, okay? So there's 5 stages of grief that someone goes through, and the first one, the very first one that everyone kind of has is denial. No, this can't be happening, not to my family member, this can't be right, no. So they'll deny it, curse at you, and kind of make things difficult for you, because they expect you, being the healthcare provider that you are, is to heal and fix the problem. And in a lot of circumstances, it's out of your control, because I'm sorry to tell you that if God punches your number's punched. There's nothing that we can do, no matter if we did CPR to perfection, no matter if the paramedics got there and they did drugs and the whole code was ran to perfection. If it's your time to leave, it's your time to leave. Part of living is dying. And unfortunately, we see that on a daily basis sometimes. So yeah, the family members are going to deny it. Sometimes even the family member who's actually in the process of dying will deny it. No, not me. It's not my time. I'm not ready. Okay, so that's the first stage. The second stage is anger. They're just mad at the world. Why me? Why does this happen to me? And of course, you always hear that term, why do bad things happen to good people? Well, that all depends on what your term of good is, and just because we're good doesn't mean that life is just going to omit us. It happens to all of us, whether we want to face the fact or not. Bad things happen to all people, not just a certain gender, not just a certain ethnicity, not just, little old people. It happens at all ages, including neonates who are stillborn, all the way up to those that live 150 and die in their sleep, and everybody in between. Death is not discriminatory as far as who it chooses. So anger is one of those other ones. Why me? Why does this have to happen to me? You hold this a lot. Or even from family members, they'll be angry with the fact that, why did you die on me? Why? So again, It's a type of stage where you have to be very careful in what you say, because you don't wanna enlighten and enhance that emotion of anger right now, because they could take it out on you, being the medical professional that you are. So you have to be very careful. Another type of phase is what's called bargaining. You know, if you'll just let them live, I will, ... and fill in the blank. They'll bargain with God, they'll bargain with the patient, they'll bargain with anybody who they think has got the higher power. If you'll just let them live just a couple more days, I promise I'll do X, Y, and Z. Sometimes that never comes to fruition, so they'll bargain. Some go into a deep depression. And then the last stage, the final stage, is pretty much acceptance. So, again, you have to pay attention to the stage of grief that the family members are in, because now you're having to contend with them. It's not the person that has passed away in the bedroom anymore. It's now the family members who's got to live with that emptiness and that void. And if you've ever lost someone that you've loved very closely, then you will understand why they go through all this, in order to give them more time with that loved one, because they possibly have regrets that now they're trying to make amends, and they didn't have the opportunity, and they're asking themselves, why didn't I, coulda, shoulda, woulda, and they didn't. So a lot of the different stages that someone goes through, especially the anger phase, is just that. They're very selfish, to the point where, I needed to make amends, and I should have, and I could have, but I just didn't. But now I really got to make amends before they die, because I didn't tell them how I felt, or I didn't, ask for their apology, or the last words I said to them were so hateful. These type of things, this is what's going to ring through their head, especially that last conversation that they've had with that family member. And if it wasn't on pleasant terms, ugly things were said, guess what? They can't take those things back now. Some of the situations and some of the findings that we find of how people kill themselves, suicide is one of those things that you will go to a lot. A lot more so during the holiday season. That's when the peak of suicides begin. And you would be surprised about the age range of suicide victims. It's normally the older men who commit suicide. Now, it's important for you to understand the type of generations that you are dealing with. The majority of our population are baby boomers. They're in their late 70s right now. They came from a generation where you didn't go to the doctor unless your arm was hanging off. You didn't go to the doctor for just any petty thing. They didn't really call the doctor unless, mama forced them to go, make mama happy, or the whole household ain't happy type thing. You have to understand that. You also have to understand that generation where they were self-sufficient. They didn't depend on anyone because they were out working. The fathers normally took care of the household as far as the income was concerned, and the moms took care of the children in the household. That's one type of generation that you're having to work with. And that being the majority of our population right now, you have to kind of find that equal playing ground. You have to respect them, and they expect the respect from you. That's their generation. Understand the generation that you contend with. And then you have, Generation Y, Generation X's, Generation Z's, and millennials, and you're working with a whole slew of generations. Well, you need to be able to connect with them. How, you need to really ask yourself and think outside the box a little bit here, is when you have a millennial who's so dependent on technology, how do you think they're going to respond when their loved one dies? Are you going to be able to connect with them? Post it on Instagram. Snapchat while you're standing in the same room. Really, I'm not trying to be funny, but they've been dependent on technology since they were born. They grew up with technology in their hand, or watching it, on a computer, or the PlayStation, or the Xbox, or whatever the whatever else is they've got going on. That's what they've been dependent on because again, being in the generation that they grew up in, you know, it's not just the father's doing the income and mom's at home taking care of the kids, making sure their homework gets done and stuff like that. Now they're latch key kids is what they call them. Well, they go home, lock the door, and then they're in the room until mom and dad get home because both of them are having to support the family now. And the kids are left by themselves. So what do you think they're going to go for? They're not going to go, well, I need to do my homework. They're going to be watching TV, doing electronics, on Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook, whatever they're called. Okay, and this is what they're doing until mom and dad gets home. It's not like the generation of the baby boomers where the family sat together at dinner together, no electronics, no TV, nothing. They had that family time. Now it's like, okay, well, what do you want? Okay, well, I'll grab it and we'll just kind of sit down and eat. And I mean, have you ever noticed at a restaurant when you're sitting there eating, how many people's got their phones out and they're just doing this and not talking to family members, not talking to the spouse, not talking to the children? They're like this right here because they make this a priority. Because they have no relationship with their children. They have no relationship with their spouse anymore. They can't even have a conversation without going, hey, Dad, what's going on? Ding! They don't have that communication anymore. They don't even know how to relate to people anymore. Understand the generations that you're dealing with. You have to gain their trust. And for those of you that are tech savvy, that's great. You have the advantage because I don't. Okay? I've only had my smartphone for a year, and it's like a basic smartphone. Basic, almost, well, 2 years now. Basic smartphone. I don't have all the advanced stuff. I don't have the newest phone. I have a phone that works. I can receive text messages, and I can answer the phone. Okay? I'd really rather go back to a flip phone. Okay? You know what I'm saying? I mean, so, you know, you have to gain the trust of your patient. And if you don't understand the generations that you're dealing with, you're gonna have a problem. And for those of you that got like the utmost phone or the most up to date phone, that's great because you know the millennial you're standing in front of who's got a medical complaint, they're gonna be on it, and that's about the only way that you're gonna be able to grab their attention. Hey man, what type of phone is that? Oh, that's awesome. I have those features too. And then this is how you're gonna build their trust.
Follow you on Instagram. By the way, I left your vitals there too.
I sent it to you in a DM.
Yeah.
I have a boyfriend.
You know what I'm saying? So you have to be versatile here, okay? I mean, as funny as that sounds, but I mean, let's face it.
All right, Joey.
I mean, it's not like it's not like it was my generation because, you know, whenever I was in school, we went home, we did our homework, and our parents kicked us out of the house. Go play. When the street lights come on, you better be home. And it was growing up in a neighborhood where everybody knew everybody, and everybody who had kids, they knew us. So if there was an issue, the neighbor would call, hey, we got your kid down here, he's eating with us, he'll be up there in just a few minutes, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Where everybody knew everybody. Now in this particular world, I mean, some kids can't even go outside their door and play in their backyard. You know what I'm saying? So again, one of the things about workforce safety is that you have to understand the generation that you're dealing with in order to know how to communicate with, in order to gain their trust so that you can treat the patient should they need treatment. You've got to build that bond, and normally it's within the first minute of your contact with that patient. It's like I said, professionalism, how you dress, how you carry yourself means a lot. Again, with the certain generations that you're, the baby boomers expect you to be professional looking. My generation expects you to carry yourself with professional traits and integrity and truthfulness. Not to sit there and lie to them and blow smoke. Especially when we're dealing with a family member who's dying or who has died. This is where your ability to adapt to the situation is going to be important. Because if they're in that anger stage, they're going to take it out on you going, well, how come you ain't doing anything? How come they're going to blame you for their patient or their family member's death because they're angry. Not because of the fact you did or didn't do your job, or couldn't do anything because they were already dead and had been dead for a while. But it's just a matter of, they see you as a medical professional and you should be helping and doing something. This is my family member, you should be taking care of them. And the sooner that you help the family members realize what has happened, the sooner that they can accept it. Because I'm sorry, if you get to a patient's house and they've been dead, and they got rigor mortis set in, and the last time anybody saw them alive was 10 hours ago, I'm not gonna start CPR on somebody. I'm gonna have to gently tell the family, well, I'm so sorry, there's nothing we can do, your family member's already passed. That's when all the emotions begin. So understanding their stages of grief will help you communicate to them in a loving and compassionate way that, okay, I understand your frustrations, and, I understand that you're angry, but, it was his time to go, he had a lot of chronic issues, he passed away in his sleep, which was graceful, and be able to start that process, because you will have family members who will, again, you have to understand that this is an emotional rush, if you will. Their emotions are heightened, they're not gonna listen to reason at the moment, because again, they're going through their own emotions about the situation. There will be patients, as far as family members who are concerned, that will pass out on you, that will go into panic attacks, that will hyperventilate and pass themselves out, and that's only a couple of lists of things that could happen. Or they physically start assaulting you, in which you don't want that to happen, but it does happen on occasion, and that's when you're gonna have to gracefully call the police and have them arrested for assault, because that is assault on you. Not that I would ever press charges, because it's happened to me several times, but at the same token, after they've got their anger issues out and the fact that they realize that the patient's gone, then it was a matter of, I'll hug them for like 15 or 20 minutes and let them just cry it out. Sometimes you're gonna be that type of support. Yes.
I know you were mentioning with the patient that you found, you already know that rigor mortis is set in with an adult, but in cases when you're dealing with children or infants, isn't it best to at least, even though you know you can't do anything?
Because again, and that's how I say, every scene is considered a crime scene until proven differently. And if a baby's been dead because of SIDS, has everybody heard of SIDS? Okay, so that is sudden infant death syndrome, and it's a very big, huge blanket of an umbrella of unknown causes as far as why a child dies in the middle of the night. So even when you have because I've had many of those situations where we've had kids that had SIDS, or was suspected SIDS confirmed by medical examiner, but even in that case when they're blue and when they got rigor, I'm not going to give the family false hope.
Right.
You cannot do that, especially in a situation where they are obviously dead. Okay, do not ever do that. The only time when things might change is when you'll do cosmetic CPR, is when the family's all up in your grill and it hasn't been hours, it's been maybe 30 minutes, maybe an hour, where they're still kind of warm and dead, and I'm not trying to disrespect the dead, but when they're warm and dead, and they're just in a frantic emotional high right now, and that's all they see is they want you to do something, and you feel as though your life is in danger and the safety of the scene has now changed, it might be in your best interest to do that. But not with someone who's been dead for a while and you recognize the signs that you're looking for. Okay? Now, this has always been a question from all the EMT classes that I've had, is what do we do with the family members, especially with a dead person? Because if I'm teaching you that every scene is considered a crime scene until proven differently, then what about the family members? Do we allow them to have the opportunity to go see them? Do we allow them to have the opportunity to hold their hand, have a couple of minutes with them, blase, blase? That's gonna be kind of case by case dependent. If it's a situation in which It was an older person who had a lot of chronic issues, who you feel as though they've kind of passed away in their sleep, and then they found them the next morning, then by all means, let the family have a couple of minutes with them, so that they can say their piece, because at that point, then the coroner's gonna come, they're gonna take the body, and whether or not they do an autopsy or whether or not they send it to the funeral home, that's all up to them as far as what plans they had already had scheduled for the patient upon their death, if they had a will and had everything laid out, if you will.
There's signs of like an altercation or something.
Yeah, if it's a signs of altercation or just something, the pieces just aren't fitting right, then no. You are not to allow the family to go into that room, because then you need police to secure the room because something just doesn't feel right. Something doesn't look right. And you'll know the scene. That's how come when you are doing a scene survey in someone's house or in a restaurant or whatever, you're taking in the entire scene for what it is. And if you see things disarrayed, broken on the ground, you know, things like that that could show altercations, and I mean, look at the patient. If the patient's got bruising or their shirt's been torn, and their story from the family member just isn't adding up with what you're seeing, then you need to consider that a crime scene and escort the patients out of that room at that point. Allow the family to talk it out, okay? If it's a situation where you can allow them to go see the patient, allow them to go see the patient for a few minutes. Let them cry it out, kiss them for the last time, talk to them for the last time, whatever, so that they can have some closure. Because again, once they go to the morgue or the family or the funeral home, they really don't see them again until they see them in the casket. So if they need closure, give them closure within reason, and if you feel as though, you know, there's no foul play involved. Okay, because again, you have to contend with the family members. They are now considered your patients other than the patient who's died. So comfort them, do whatever you think you need to do. And then ensure that prior to you leaving, that they have some type of access to counseling, to a pastor, somebody, for them to go talk to, okay? So here in Columbus, I mean, there's several different locations that they can go. The Pastoral Institute offers counseling and things like this. And if the family member was actually in hospice care, the hospice group actually offers counseling for up to a year after the passing of their loved one. So there are places that offer counseling, grief counseling, if you will, for those that have lost loved ones. Okay, so please kind of know your generations that you're dealing with, the family members. Again, please, please, please do not give them false hope. It's one thing if the scene has changed and it becomes dangerous for you and you better just do cosmetic stuff until you get them in your ambulance, especially if the police department's not on scene, but any other time, don't give them false hope. Don't do it. Okay? It's better for them to acknowledge the fact that their loved one has died then than for you to waste your time, and I'm again not trying to be disrespectful, to waste your time on someone who's been dead for a while, to take them to a hospital, and then you're gonna be laughed at by taking a dead person to the hospital, because then, that's not cool, okay? This is where your autonomy comes to play, because the decision that you make in the field is going to impact other people. So ensure that your decision is one that was right for the situation, including the passing of a loved one. Okay? Anybody have any questions on that? Because this is one thing that I can't prepare you for as far as all the different types of deaths that people go through, whether it be self-inflicted or by natural causes. I'll give you a couple of examples. SIDS was one of them. That was several of the calls that I've been out on were very difficult because and this is why you need to educate the people that you are interacting with. It has always been told, never ever sleep with your infant. Never ever. And of course, how many of you have children who slept with your children?
I am definitely a co-sleeper. I was doing it at the hospital. They was like, you gotta stop. I'm a co-sleeper. I am.
Okay, so I've had several instances in where a parent rolled over onto the infant and suffocated their kid. And this guy's beating on my chest, expecting me to revive their baby that's been dead for 8 hours. You know the guilt that man feels? He went into a major depression not too long after that. Hey, take the time to educate the people that you deal with, especially if you find out that the parent or parents are sleeping with their kids. Absolutely not. They need their own crib. I don't care if the crib's in the same room next to the bed, that's one thing. Not in the same bed with the kid. No, no, no.
My kids are really young, but
SIDS is one thing, that's pretty bad, you know, because an infant. Then we had another issue where, again, going to a scene of a call in which a teenager had blew his head off in his bedroom. And mom and dad's hysterical, well, we didn't see the signs, we didn't know what was going on. And after talking with them, they absolutely saw the signs, they just ignored it. Kid been crying for help for months, messing up in school. This guy was a straight A student, and all of a sudden his grades dropped to F's. He was being yelled at home. I take away all your electronics, and all of a sudden you need to get your grades up. He was saying, well, I'm really having an issue. You know, a friend of mine, he committed suicide too, and he had an issue, and they just blew it off. Didn't send him to counseling. Didn't go to the school counselor to find out what was going on. Had a gun that wasn't locked up where it should be. 9 years old. 9. Parents didn't think that it was appropriate to lock up a gun. Yes.
A lot of these situations we're talking about, I'm assuming this is a definite preemptive thing, because doing something after the fact would most likely escalate the situation to an aggressive one. Yeah.
So you can't point the fingers at the parents at this point, even though, I mean, they're their own worst enemy right then.
So this is one of those situations where it's just taking in the scene and the situation, even if you're there for something else, notice something else going on with the other family, make sure that they can run away, talk to them.
Yep. So again, you think that the kids are a bad situation. Okay, well, I had a 56-year-old, 57-year-old, I forgot how old she was. She was in her late 50s. And bless her heart, she was a little old thing, had arthritis in just about every joint that you can imagine, taking a slew of medications. And, you know, she got around, she never complained. So she was walking in her hallway with a brush in her hand, and she tripped over the carpet. Okay, always look for a safety hazard for old people. Carpets and loose rugs is one of them. Well, she slipped and fell, and that brush implanted in her eye, and went through her skull, killed her. So when family got there, she's laying on the ground, a little bit of blood, they didn't think anything, so they were freaking out. By the time they rolled her over and found the brush stuck in her face, in her eye, I mean, you can imagine. So, you see where I'm going? There's a lot of death scenes that you're gonna have to go and take in. The family members is going to be important on how to care for, what to say, if anything at all. Sometimes just being a shoulder to cry on, the chest to beat on. And I will say this, I haven't heard a lot of them down here, but it was pretty prominent in Atlanta, but you know how, I only just left my kid in the bathtub for a minute. drown in an inch of water. Infants even, they can drown on a tablespoon of water. Or better yet, they have a swimming pool in the backyard that they don't have gates around or locks around or something like that. Oh, I just wanted to answer the phone. I just wanted to change out the laundry. And they're face down in the pool. Again, I'm sorry, and please don't hate me for making the statement. For the 22 years that I've been in this business, I always feel like it's the parents' fault for not doing their job protecting their children. Of everything that I've seen, children are not being protected like they should. If you don't believe me, ride around in Columbus and find out how many kids are not in booster seats and car seats, walking around over the seats, jumping back and forth from the front seat to the back seat.
Or like not just being vocal, right? Like I see this all the time. Like people
Okay.
post pictures and like they're not even, their chest piece isn't where it should be, or it's too loose, or like the head piece isn't pulled up to like fit their height. Like,
We were talking about that before, the, not seated properly or not buckled properly, where the head's allowed to go down.
or you do one with all this stuff in their front seat. And
Oh
their
my
neck's
God,
like
oh
this.
my
God, yeah, that's, yeah. So, again, you being in the public service or public safety profession, take the time to educate people. A simple minor change can save that kid from going through the windshield.
Probably not just like fear out front, be like, hey.
Yeah, no, pull over! Okay,
Like
okay.
his front seat.
If you go into a home of an elderly patient, look for hazards. The rugs, area rugs, that's the number one hazard. Other things are like, what do you call that? The cables. Infants, even small little children who climb and things like that, because again, they're curious at that age. Ensure that their crib has got locks on it. Ensure that the little, pulley strings for the blinds are put up and kept up. You know how many kids have died from strangling themselves with those strings?
They got rid of those strings now. All the things are just loaded up, pulled down.
Not all of them.
No, I'm saying like they don't sell them anymore. Like,
Yeah, they do.
Still?
Yes.
I haven't been able to find one.
Could you
That's
let
what I
me-
want.
Yeah.
No, I went to Lowe's and everything, and I went to Home Depot.
Okay, so little things like that. It is are the plugs covered with the little covers? You know how many kids have stuck something in an electrical socket? I mean, just little things like this, you need to be aware of. Make that a point to point out to people if you've got the time. It could save a kid's life, it could save someone's life. So your book kind of goes through stress management and the acute stress syndromes and other things about how you handle stress in the field, because again, we are under a lot of stress. I think our job is one of the most stressful jobs other than a 911 dispatcher, because again, the 911 dispatcher doesn't see the outcome of what they're having to hear over the phone. But our lives and our work is pretty stressful because a life can hang in the balance, and it's your decision of how that outcome may happen, especially at the paramedic level. But you are just as responsible, because you are medically trained, you are licensed, just like I was as an EMT. Just whenever I went through EMT school, we were able to start IVs and give medications, whereas y'all cannot, at least not now. You can assist the patient with their own medication, but you can't give it. I was able to give it back then when I first started. So with the stress level, you have to understand a couple of things. Everybody's stress level is different. There's gonna be that one call that's just gonna push you over the edge, where you yourself go through not necessarily types of denial, but just anger at the people for being stupid, not being careless, or just they flat out have that attitude of we don't care. You will go through a lot of stress in this job because when you have, multiple patients on the scene and you can only treat the first person that you categorized and triage, and you have to wait for resources, and you're actually calling someone dead who's actually, and you're watching take their last breath, is pretty freaking stressful. Not to mention kids are always stressful because when you have that child that can't talk to you and now you're having to figure things out, that's pretty stressful. When you're having to deal with drivers who don't know what to do when they see an ambulance but behind the car and they stop right in front of you thinking that's going to help your purpose, that's pretty stressful. That's probably the reason why whenever I was at Grady, I worked night shift. I didn't have to worry about the stupid people, or at least not a whole lot of them. How you deal with stress is all going to be dependent on how long you stay in this field. If you do not have a de-stress mechanism, I strongly suggest you get one. And for those of you that are married or in a relationship and stuff like that, here's some advice I strongly give to you. Do it.
Hey, that's dark.
Okay, well you say that, well,
Divorce.
safety personnel are among the highest rating of divorce rates.
I like it.
Do you have to pay for it?
Everything is cool.
Yeah,
Everything
no,
is
right.
cool.
So here's my advice to you, that's either in a relationship or married, is keep work and keep home home. Keep work and keep home home, and don't mix the two. I'll give you a prime example of my own life, okay? Because when Terry and I met, I was still a supervisor at Grady, and he was active military. And when we got married, and I would come home, I would start just saying, "Man, I can't believe this happened." Blah blah. And I'm just spilling my guts out to him and stuff like that, and he's just looking at me like, "Okay, great."
So we both have nightmares now.
You know, you know what I'm saying? But if I'm sitting there telling him about my day to a person who's not medically trained, is he going to understand what I'm going through? Is he going to understand the stress? Is he going to understand my frustration that has now heightened to an nth degree because I have a spouse who can't relate? This is why divorce happens among safety personnel. You got somebody who yes, he's your best friend, he's my best friend, I tell him everything. But when I came home and I took a uniform shirt off, I was his wife. I was his best friend. I could talk to him about anything other than work. Because if I had an issue with work, I would talk to people who's in the field at work, going, "Hey, I can't believe this stupid dude. I just, okay?" And then we would have a powwow, and he'd make me feel better, and then I could drive home. I left it at work, not bringing it home, because now it's on my mind 24/7, and your mind doesn't take a break. This is how you get to a breaking point very quickly in the EMS field. If you don't talk to people who's in the field, to someone who's never going to understand, don't expect them to be on your side and be able to understand what you're feeling. Keep work, and keep home. When you take that uniform off, then you're a mom, you're a wife, you're a sister, you're whoever you need to be at home. If you're still frustrated about your work detail, then I strongly suggest you go away from the family and you call somebody, your partner or a supervisor, or somebody at work, and go, "Look, I still can't get over this. This is some bull crap." And tell them, get it out. You're de-stressing yourself at this point. If you hang on to it, it's just going to fester, and it's going to fester, and it's going to fester, and you're going to wind up taking it out on the wrong person, meaning a patient or a patient's family member, and then you have no job. Because let's face it, EMS, just like any other career that you go into, is customer service oriented. I'm just here to tell you, okay? So again, make sure that you are taking the time to de-stress, whatever that is. Whether you have girls' night, whether you go for petty medis or whatever they're called, whether you go to workout, whether you go run, whether you go walk, whether you do kickboxing, whatever, playing video games, you know, whatever you need to do to de-stress, you need to have a de-stress mechanism every day.
You got me messed up.
You know, whatever that looks like, okay? You've got to have that in order to maintain your well-being, not just physically, but emotionally, because sometimes you get emotionally attached to what's going on in the situation. You get attached. And I'll give you a prime example. I was out of work for 2.5 weeks. Me and my partner got a call in Techwood Homes, which is associated with Georgia Tech, the school, university. And we get there, and there's 4 different children of all different sizes, the youngest being 4 and the oldest being about 13. And they came home, and the youngest one, who was 4, found mom, didn't know that she was dead, in the bathroom. So when older brother came home from school, he goes up there and calls 911. He knows just something's not right. So we get there, sure enough, mom's dead. We had to treat that like a crime scene. And you know what? I almost had a fist fight with the fire department, who was barging up the stairs to get to this bedroom to find out where the patient was, and I almost got a fist fight with them because they wanted to come in and see. And I was like, no, you're not. You might as well just turn your happy butts around and go back down and go back to your station. You're not coming in this room. The youngest girl hung on to me from the time the police department got there for 6.5 hours until DFACS got on my scene. Would not let me go. I mean, I had claw marks and bruise marks where this girl had just clung into me. My partner had to go round up the other boys because they're freaking out and they know what's going on at this point. And she had to go gather them and put them in our truck until DFACS got there, my supervisor got there, the coroner got there. Okay, come to find out later on, after the fact, that mom was killed by children's daddy.
I was about to say that. Nobody was going to.
You know how much that tore me up? That tore me up a while. For 2.5 weeks, I was out of work. Yeah, no. Okay, so I'm just here to tell you, you get attached. As off the wall as that was, that was not my first murder scene. It was not my last either, but the fact that children were involved and the youngest one was the one who found mom. She was the first one home with the next oldest one because the person who got them off the bus was right next door, so she let them in the door and she said, I gotta go get your lunch or whatever and bring it over, and about that time, other children had come home, and then that's when they went searching through the house or through the apartment. That was not a pretty sight going to court either.
Why you had to go to court? You seen it?
Yeah. And because of the fact that, again, because it was a crime scene, we had to list everything we touched, everything we moved, who went in and out of that room before the police got there. So again, a continuity of care for preservation of a crime scene type thing.
So the fire department just wanted to see a dead body? Is that?
Yeah.
You're gonna get those kind of things.
Oh, yeah. And me and my partner were standing at the bedroom door because we knew it was coming. Hey, we're here to help. What's going on? I said, the patient's already passed away and we're waiting for the police department to get here. And I had the 4-year-old clinging on to me at that point. Oh, we need to come. You need to move. We need to see this. I said, no, you don't. I said, don't make me do something I don't want to do. I really don't. I would have force punched him. Yeah.
That's something I don't think I'm gonna handle well, is an open scene area, because in the military, I mean, we deal with things, at least on a somewhat professional level, but out in the open where a bunch of civilians are trying to, I wanna get this photo or video for my, Instagram or whatever.
Yeah.
That'll just.
So I'm glad you brought that up because, okay, this was in someone's residence, now imagine this on the streets of Columbus somewhere.
Did you hear about Kobe? About Kobe? His wife is suing the LA Sheriff's Department because they took pictures of, like, him and his daughter.
From the helicopter.
Oh, I'm
Sure.
sure.
Crash,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, I seen that too.
Okay, so here's a couple of things about crime scenes and about scenes when you have something like that. Is that first and foremost, don't ever never cover a body with a sheet. Or at least not with a cloth sheet. Okay, because at that point, you are contaminating the scene. It will never be with a cloth sheet. Now, we have plastic sheets in there that you can cover a patient with, but never ever a cloth sheet. And then you have to respect the fact that, yeah, there's gonna be crowds there's gonna be taking pictures and stuff like that. You do what you think is best to preserve the dignity of that patient who's just died until the police can come and secure the scene. But don't ever, never take anything off the scene. Don't ever, never cover them with a sheet that is made of fabric, because now you have just contaminated everything. So please don't do that. Now, when we talk about stress and you have a stress way out, whether that be through exercise, whether that be going to a spa, whatever that looks like, you need to maintain it in order to keep your sanity. Because a lot of EMTs and paramedics get burnt out very quickly because they let this fester, and then they get to the point where they're not compassionate about the people. They're just robots doing their thing. I hope that you're going into this field to make a difference and that you have compassion for your fellow citizen. Because I'm here to tell you, there is no greater joy than saving someone's life or saving someone who can never repay you. That's basically what you're doing. You're helping someone who now they are indebted to you and can never repay the debt. That's kind of like a self-gratification type thing. Well, that's what I do, man. I'm glad I was here to help. I'm glad your family member's gonna be okay. I'm glad I made a difference. I hope that you have compassion for your fellow citizen. Because if you ever find yourself where you just don't give a care, no call's ever gonna bother me, then you need to get out of the business. Get out. I don't need you. I need someone who's gonna be compassionate. I need someone who's gonna be respectful to the bum on the street or to the President of the United States and everyone in between. I need someone who's not gonna be judgmental of the person that's in front of you, even though that they're a crack addict or a heroin addict that you picked up 50 times in a row. I need for you to still have the same compassion for that person. I need for you to have compassion of the homeless man who's just been assaulted by other homeless people or whatever, and have compassion on them, though they smell pretty bad. I need for you to have compassion on the rich folks who tip their noses up to us and they want you to take your shoes off before they enter your house. Yeah, no, that's not gonna happen. And that's an OSHA violation. We can't take our shoes off anyway, but whatever. I need for you to have compassion to them. I need for you to have the compassion who's been to the kid that's been neglected, or to the older lady that's been abused. This is the field I'm asking you to go into. Do you have the compassion? Are you sure you're going into this field for the right reason? Because if you're expecting a slap on the back for every life you save, it ain't gonna happen. If you're expecting a thank you for the family members, maybe few and far between. Because again, let's face it, when people call 911, they're not having their best day, they're having their worst day. Put yourself in the family member's shoes. You're responsible for taking care of them, for looking out for them, and now you can't. Now you're having to depend on somebody else to come in here, and they're freaking out, and they're like, hey man, do something, you're not quick enough. Shelley played the role quite well. What took you so long? It's been like 20 minutes. I mean, she was all up in your grill. Welcome to family members.
You okay?
I need to find some.
I know.
Get some work on him.
Okay, so again, This is what I'm asking you to go into. And again, I don't think that the public really understands what we do until a pandemic hits the United States. And then it's, oh, well, we love our first responders. We love what they do. Well, dang it, that's what we've been doing since like the 1800s, or actually since, when was Napoleon? 1800s, okay?
1800. Remember, that's
So, yeah, I know, right?
Remember, 1776, the word 1812 was before Napoleon, so it has to be 18.
Alright.
Okay, but you know what I'm talking about. It's the Napoleon era, if you will. But please take care of yourself. Eat healthy. Because let's face it, it's not like we have a 9-to-5 job and you can take a break unless you live up north where there are unions and stuff, and I just don't want to talk about that because I'm so infuriated with that whole thing up there.
What?
Okay, it's not a 9-to-5 job. You're on the run constantly, depending on the areas that you work. So I'll tell you, okay, unions up north. Y'all didn't hear about the union, the two paramedics, or the EMT and the paramedic that was on a union break, and a pregnant lady approached them in respiratory distress secondary to an asthma attack that was exacerbated by the smells in that coffee shop, and they watched her die? We're on union break.
Did they get in trouble or?
Yeah, you should.
I mean, there's
I
no
don't know,
reason they probably
that
didn't.
story, but
That was
I
the
don't know how you
story.
defend yourself.
And then the what would you do dude on TV did a follow-up to that in New York City or wherever it was where this happened, and they were appalled. The people were, that lady and child died, by the way, because they chose to do nothing. Well, we're on our union break.
That's almost
It's
like
our,
murder.
it's our lunch break, or it was our coffee lunch. It
Really?
was our 15-minute break that we're required to have.
I don't think they should have their job no more.
Oh, they were.
Because if you're training, you sit there, you're watching somebody die, you
If you
ain't.
get a union break, you get a union break.
No.
That's not.
No.
You're never on a break when you have this job because you never know when
Even in a
somebody
coffee shop
gonna
that's
leave.
so important that
I
like,
don't
you know, I would
agree.
help
No.
you, but this caramel macchiato, like,
He's like, yes, Jeff.
I think you're gonna follow it.
Yeah, you try that crap down here in Columbus and you're gonna be the first one sued.
New York either, or wherever it was.
But I'm just saying, they were on a union break. And I'm sorry, that $8 macchiato was much more important than the life of a young woman and her unborn child. How can they ethically do nothing?
Yeah, they had a break.
So, and you
That
wonder
should be
why,
wrong.
and you wonder why safety personnel can sometimes be the target of someone's
There's a
legal
lot,
issues.
and they say it's a lot of things in New York, but I mean, I can't disagree with you. We left someone on, everyone left that train situation where a guy was dead in the sea for hours, and nobody said or mentioned anything, 'cause we don't look at each other. We try not to even acknowledge that there's other living people in the area. That's city life, it's not just New York.
Yeah, but when this is your
I
job,
don't know, I've never seen anyone leave somebody dead on the bus. This we were trained for how long in Atlanta?
What in the world?
I mean, you'd be surprised. I mean, I'm not gonna defend people who do that.
So, take care of yourself physically, emotionally, because this job is demanding. Your book also starts talking about, you know, what you need to do to protect yourself from the pathogens and the viruses and the diseases and things like that that we come into contact with pretty much every day, COVID being one of them now. But you also need to properly disinfect and sanitize your unit between calls. That's how come I teach you, don't start putting gloves on when you're driving to the scene, that you put them gloves on as you're approaching the patient, so that one, you're not contaminating all the equipment, your equipment that's in your work area. You need to wipe down the stretchers, handrails, all the rails that you think you touched, the door handles. And here's another one I'm just gonna throw out there to you, okay? When you go home, I strongly suggest that you leave your boots outside and don't go tracking through your house, especially if you have little ones still crawling on the floor. Because you really don't think about that, you're tired, you wanna get home, don't care, okay? Keep your boots outside with like alcohol, bleach, water solution, and you put those in every night or every day, wash them every day. Because sometimes you have to track through people's blood. And I'm sorry, but if you look at just my shoes and the craters that are in there, am I gonna be able to get all that out really good if I really don't spend the time to clean? Because when you're running back to back to back calls, I ain't got time to clean my boots. I may spray them down with something. That's really not gonna clean all the junk that's on the bottom of my feet. And if you have children at home, you're gonna take all that crap and you're gonna walk through your house, through the carpet and stuff like that, and now your kid's gonna be exposed. If you think about tuberculosis, and you think about HIV, and you think about syphilis, and you think about all these other diseases and stuff like that that's out there, you know, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, all this other stuff that we're exposed to, one, you need to properly know how to disinfect your unit before every call and after calls and things like that. And two, you need to understand the process of how that disease gets transmitted. What is the route of transmission? Some of it, respiratory, COVID being one of them, flu is another. How many of you know, or how many of you are scared of HIV patients and if they happen to get blood on you? If that were to happen, are you concerned?
As long as they didn't-
Yeah, to a certain extent.
Why?
Because
Why?
it can be transmitted.
I know it's transmitted through body fluids, but,
With your blood, that's one thing, but not on your skin.
yeah.
Right.
Do y'all understand that by the time HIV blood hits the ground, it's dead? Do y'all know that? HIV works with a host cell. So blood on blood, absolutely, I'd be
Yeah,
concerned.
like if you got a cut.
But if it's like you're dealing with someone and he's got a scratch or something and it hits your skin, it's already dead by the time it hits your skin. Plus it can't be absorbed in your skin. Understand how diseases are processed, how they live on surfaces for 5 to 10, 15 days. I'm not worried about HIV in patients who's got it. I'm more worried about those who's got Hep A and Hep B, things like this that stays on surfaces for a lot longer than something that dies by the time it hits the surface. You need to educate yourself. That's how come before you go to clinicals, I need your immunization record. I need to make sure that you've had measles, mumps, rubella, that you've had varicella, that you've had a Tdap, the tetanus shot or whatever. I need to make sure that you are covered. If not, you're gonna have to go get them. Because you were exposed to these type of childhood diseases are now coming back. Yes.
That would be a immunization form. I got mine. There was only one that I didn't have, and it was rotavirus. Vaccine for rotavirus, which I didn't know what that was. Apparently it's something with I don't know, like diarrhea or something as a baby or whatever. You only get it in like the first 6 months.
So again, educate yourself on the different diseases that you're being exposed to. Your ambulance service company, whoever that is required to provide you with a proper disinfectant, if you will, or cleaning solution to clean and wipe down your unit in between the patients that you transport and stuff. Okay, how many of y'all seen that little baby wipe thing, but they're actually cleaning wipes? I'm sure you've seen them at Doctor's Shop. The purple top, the yellow top, and the white top, okay? Those are some of the ones that we use. There's also, spray cleaners and stuff like that. You need to make sure that you're protecting yourself from your own perspective, because again, that is your work area. If you don't keep it clean, don't expect somebody else to. You gotta keep yourself healthy. You gotta keep yourself protected. Proper personal protective equipment. We've talked about this already. Masks, gowns, gloves, safety wear, vests when you're out there on the streets, and it doesn't matter if it's a local street or the interstate. You need to have a high fluorescent vest on where people can see you. I'm sorry, that just makes you a bigger target. I'm sorry. Like, wow. Okay, so does the lights, okay? You're gonna have to teach yourself how to eat healthy while you're on the streets. Take your little lunch bag, I'm telling you. You may not get a break in between, or you may get that break at the hospital when you're dropping off a patient, that's about the only quick time that you get to eat, or you're actually eating en route to a call.
Patient at the table. Good, we're taking the hospital, you're stable. Thank
Okay.
you. Classic firefighter.
So, you have to think about these things. This is not a 9 to 5 job where you have an hour for break or a half an hour lunch break. You're constantly eating on the run. And again, the intention or the intent is, well, I just grab something from, Wendy's or Burger King or somewhere like that. You get into the habit of eating fast foods every day, that's not healthy for you either. And I will say this about critical stress management, because again, we are under a lot of stress when we deal with certain calls and things like that. A doctor came up with what's called CISM, which is Critical Incident Stress Management. And I think this is in your book.
It says stress relief.
Okay, I'll get to that here in just a second. Alright. I have gone through the training of critical incident stress management whenever I was at Grady as a field training officer, both for the peer and group interventions. When you have a stressful type of situation that you just can't shake, it's on your mind constantly, and then you find yourself not enjoying the activities that you used to, you stopped eating, or your moods change for whatever based on an event. I'm part of that team that starts the debriefing process, and we do it within the first 24 hours of a critical incident. And let me explain what a critical incident can be. It can be a situation where you're dealing with a pediatric patient or an infant that has SIDS, and you have children at home, for instance. Or let's say you have, your children's friends, committed suicide or something like that. Now it's affecting your children and now you had to go out and run a call and things like that. Another critical incident can be a situation that just is out of the norm, such as a mass shooting event. Or, I don't know if y'all have heard of the bus accident that happened up there in Atlanta with the baseball team from Ohio, or Michigan or Ohio, one of the two states. That's what's considered a critical incident that could eventually have some effect on you from the mental capacity, if you will. Other incidents can be something as simple as there was a car wreck and a child wasn't restrained properly and the child got injured pretty bad. Something simple that can trigger something in your mind that now you just can't shake it, you can't let it go, you have mixed emotions, you're pretty angry about the whole situation, and you just can't let it go. Well, that's where I kind of come in with this critical incident stress management. I've been taught to do what we call a debriefing within the first 24 to 72 hours of an incident that bothers you, or an incident that we feel you need to come in for a debriefing for. Now, a lot of the services don't offer this because they don't know about the training or they just refuse to take the training. But let me give you some confidence when you go into these debriefings, whether I'm your employer or not. When we come in the room and we close the doors, I'm telling you, this is how strict this debriefing is when I bring you into a debriefing and we come into a scheduled room, the doors are locked and there's security on the outside of those doors. Then when you come in, you have to sign a waiver saying that anything and everything that is talked about in this room stays in this room. Anything and everything you talk about in that room is confidential. And if it gets out, guess what? There's only 3 people in that, 4 people, whoever that's in that list, I know who to start contacting. Okay? You have to understand the confidentiality portion of this. And then I'm to do or schedule the debriefing. Talk about the call. What bothers you? Get out your emotions, whatever those are. So that you can begin to heal. Whatever is said, I don't care if you wanna go out there and kill the dude, whatever the situation, I just wanna go out there and kill that stupid person, blah, whatever that is. And if I happen to be an employer, or your supervisor or something like that, I cannot hold that against you from the employment perspective. I have to just let you talk it out. And that's the purpose of the debriefing, is get your emotions out, to get it all out, to where hopefully you can start recovering over this incident. That's the purpose of the debriefing. Then we follow that up after that within 24 hours to ensure that you're okay. If not, then we provide to you employee assistance, which you will then make contact with psychiatrist, psychologist. I forgot who's the one that you kind of sit down with and talk to. Psychologist. Okay, for you to go and talk with them until you can get over this particular incident. That doesn't go on your file. It doesn't go on your record. It's a way to prevent you from getting burnt out, and for you to do a careless mistake for the next patient that you run across in the same situation. That's the purpose of critical incident stress management. We recognize the stress you're under. And it doesn't have to be something major, it can be something very minor to trigger your emotional upset, if you will. It doesn't take it doesn't take something like a mass shooting. It could be something as simple as, there was a wreck and the kid got hurt and mom didn't properly put him in the car seat. Or it could be, little old lady she reminds you of your grandma that just passed away in someone's house and now the family's upset. It could be anything that can kind of trigger that emotional upset. So I strongly encourage you to take down my cell phone number and call me if you are in a situation where you need to talk about something. It's better to get it out, to express your feelings so that we know how to heal. Because if you don't, you're not going to stay in this business for a long period of time. There are things that we see no one else should have to see. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to want to kill somebody. Been there, done that. Wanted to kill somebody. Okay, been there, done that in a debriefing. It's okay to feel that way. You're human too. Hello. I don't expect you to be a robot out there and just be emotionless. That's not the purpose of being in this field. But that's the purpose of this particular type of meeting and debriefing, is to start the healing process. Because when you start not enjoying the things that you used to do, your hobbies, going out with girlfriends, guys, having guy time, whatever y'all do, and you stop doing that, you kind of recluse yourself into your own home, don't want to get out anymore, and this is affecting you, then you need to seek help, and you need to recognize that. And getting help is not a bad thing. You're a human. You have the right for feelings. It's just at the moment you just can't tell them to their face. It's got to be after the fact, and so forth. I still have employees from Grady call me 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. To this day. Still have people call me. Hey, I ran this call, it's really bothering me. Okay, well, let's talk about it. But I don't want you to feel guilty when people die. They're going to die. Sometimes right before your eyes. Sometimes after you've worked so hard and you did everything to perfection, you did everything that you were trained to do, people are going to die. It's a part of life. Please have a way to de-stress yourself. And if it bothers you to the point where you can't let go, then call somebody who can help you. That's all I'm asking. That's all about workforce safety and the wellness of an EMT. How well can you balance your emotional and physical well-being with what you're being exposed to every day? it's a rarity that we have mass shootings. It's a rarity that we have bus accidents who take out almost an entire baseball team. It's a rarity that we have shootings like we've had in Atlanta on multiple occasions, both at the federal courthouse. I don't know if y'all were aware of that, but there was a shooting at the federal courthouse in Atlanta. There was the Buckhead shootings, and then for those of you that can remember the Olympics in 1996, there was explosions in the middle of the 1996 Olympics. Then there's tornadoes and hurricanes that rip through Atlanta, and there's hurricanes and things like that that happen here. Luckily, by the grace of God, we haven't been hit so bad that, you know, houses have been demolished with people in it, or, you know, it hit a school or something like that. I don't know if y'all are aware, you know how many school bus accidents have happened over the past year or two? Across the nation. You know how many ambulance wrecks has happened in the past 2 days, just the start of this week? 12 across the nation. Either has killed the patient and or the medics, or they have significantly injured them. And one, I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure what happened, but even in New York City, a fire truck T-boned their own ambulance. How does that even happen? So please be aware of the risk that you're going into. Please be aware that Georgia is now going to change some of the laws about when you can and cannot run with lights and sirens. Because your lives are too important. And if your paramedic can't take care of that patient in the back driving casually to the hospital, then they don't need to be in the back of that rig. There's way too many people being killed. Because again, I'm not worried about you being the driver. I'm worried about the other people. Because they don't know what to do. They see a police car coming in, they'll slam on brakes, or they'll swerve over, want to, you know, taking somebody out too. But stopping in front of you happens all day long, and you're like, move over, and they're still sitting there. And then by the time you get to the actual location, you know, 20, 25 minutes later, because you've been delayed by stupid people, then they're gonna start on you, just like Chili did when y'all were walking out there. What take you so long? Okay, their emergency seemed like every minute was an hour. And because you are medically trained, their medical emergency is very different from your interpretation of that medical emergency. So by the time you get there and the kid or adult has a cough and flu-like symptoms for 3 days, and you're running out here because he's in, quote, respiratory distress because they said the right word in order to get you out there faster, and you're going, okay, so what seems to be the problem? Well, he's had a cough for like 3 days. Okay, great. And you just want to choke him out. Stressful talk. Please take the time to educate yourself on how to protect yourself, not just physically from people. If you can diffuse the situation, then talk them down, diffuse the situation, give them something to do, make them feel important, get them out of your hair. But also protect yourself in your own environment that you work in. Every time that you touch a patient, you're contaminating your equipment. Are you wiping your equipment down, or are you just slinging it back over your neck? Especially those of you that put the stethoscope around your neck. Do you know how many germs you just put around your neck? Remember, we're auscultating people's breath sounds. Where do you think the bell is at? And when you go like this, how close it is that to your face? I don't care what they do. Okay? Are you cleaning your stethoscope? If not, I'd be concerned. Are you cleaning the blood pressure cuffs? Are you cleaning the handrails off your stretcher? Are you cleaning the back door handles that you just grabbed? Are you cleaning your stuff? Protect yourself. You have to do your due diligence as a responsible EMT to protect yourself, your partner, and the next patient that goes into the back of your workspace. How many of y'all watch like a Forensic Files? How many of y'all watch that, right? Okay, and then they spray that luminol and then turn on the black light?
Yeah.
Okay, I would love to spray the back of an ambulance and just illuminate, see how much stuff, and how well people clean or don't clean.
It's just the whole thing.
I know. Okay. Here's another thing. When you're riding in the back of the ambulance and stuff like that, we call this the old crap bar that goes up the top. How many handprints are up like this, you know, and they have blood on their thing, they never wipe that pole down? See what I'm saying? You have to be aware. It's just not, we are in a chemical warfare, if you will, with all the diseases that we expose ourselves to. We volunteer for this stuff, by the way. So that's how come you've got to protect yourself. Oh my gosh, hold on. Hello? Yes, ma'am? Okay, tomorrow between 4 and 5. Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you so much. Uh-huh, bye-bye. Sorry for getting calls. Okay, so please protect yourself. Know how to protect yourself from the different diseases and stuff. Luckily, with the creation of immunizations and stuff, has prevented a lot of diseases to spread across America, but I'm telling you, some of the childhood diseases that we haven't seen in a long time is starting to creep back up. Whooping cough being one of them, smallpox being another. And we had eradicated smallpox because of the vaccine that was created. So again, protect yourself. That is highly important, okay? Do your due diligence and be the responsible EMT that you should be when you're dealing with patients and with your own workspace and stuff. Let's see. West Nile virus, HIV, Hep C, Ebola. Okay, so hazardous materials, I think is the last one, other than you just being physically well with taking enough sleep, adequate sleep, and things like that. So one of the other hazardous materials that we are exposed to, think about all the tanker trucks and stuff like that you see on the expressway with 18-wheelers, okay? Think about, okay, there's the waterworks that's right there. You know how many chemicals they have in that plant? Okay, so again, the Department of Transportation and other people got involved and they came up with a book that looks like this. This is the updated version, and I believe there's another version. Luckily with these, we carry these on the ambulance, and you can actually download this as an app. But basically what this does is that it lists all of the placards that should be labeled on any and all chemicals that you could possibly come involved with. For example, I'm sure you've seen like a placard like this on a truck and it's got a number on it. So you would either look up the placard or you look up the number to know exactly what that material is. So when we have an emergency that deals with, let's say, an 18-wheeler who has overturned, and we find that placard, we need to find that number immediately, find out what it is, and because that's going to dictate how close or how far we're going to get away from that scene. There's multitude of hazards on our roads every day. And yes, there have been chemical spills. There have been actually even a beer truck, a simple thing as a beer truck could be deadly if you're not careful. I know. Alcohol abuse. Okay, but you know, more of the other ones, you know, some that are flammable, some that is caustic, some that is explosive. If you're not, just write a 280, 180, 80, whatever the, I-85, and just look at how many tanker trucks pass you by. There's not, but a mile and a half down the road where I live, there is the huge, big old gallon, I mean, the big old cisterns, if you will, of gasoline, a mile and a half away from my house. Am I concerned? Absolutely I am. Because if that sucker ever explodes, guess where, it's gonna rumble, and it's gonna rumble pretty far. Yeah, no, right? So again, you have a guy that's at your fingertips in order to know what the actual chemical is, the potential hazards, what you need to do to protect the public, and then what you need to do as far as protective clothing, the evacuation, and then the first aid. It actually lists some of the first aid stuff of that particular hazardous material. So these are on your truck. I don't know if they have the current one or not, but download the app. It's pretty quick. Do a search of the number, poof, pops up and all the information. Now with hazardous materials, you also have to understand that the hazardous materials are just not stuff that we see, like the chemicals, and we actually see it spilling and things like that. Hazardous materials can also be, here we go, ready? Hybrid cars. Sharon's going like, what the hang dang?
Yeah, what must be?
No, I'm talking about hybrids, ones that's half electric and half gasoline.
Oh, yeah, that's not, yeah.
That can be hazardous. It's got high voltage in that car.
Right. And
Hazardous materials, okay, is just not things from a tanker truck or the waterworks or wherever, swimming pools. That's another hazardous material. If you're not careful and they dump too much chlorine, dump too much whatever else they put in there, shock treatment or whatever else is in that bag, that can be a hazardous material. Going right down here to the waterworks and they have a chemical spill right there, chlorine is one of the #1 things they use among other hazardous materials, and it could be deadly to you. That's how come these books were made. Utilize them, have them readily accessible, become familiar on how to use them, because again, kind of pass around, look at them, because again, they list all the types of materials that are out there with their numbers. They tell you what's explosive, what's toxic, what could cause cancers and things like that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on our streets. Yes,
Right,
brother.
that's on my, reminds me of the fact that, they had a plane, it was in 1960s, and it was moving atomic bombs that were all active. And the plane went down, and they lost one of the bombs in the center of the US. They still haven't found it to this day, and it's an active bomb that's just buried in the ground.
Yeah, I hate to be that person who's gonna roll over that and weird. Boom!
Well, not either.
What part of the country is this?
It was somewhere in the center of the US, I can't remember what state.
Oh, the
it was.
place I never would go, good.
The barber school is like so many hours, and the police academy is like so many hours, and then it's like that market thing, and it's like took some BS online course to transport explosives in the military, and I was like,
Well, they put us 4 months in San Antonio at Brooke Army Medical Center for our training, and then we're deployed as EMTIs. I could do IVs. I had an entire NARC kit, which I had never been trained on. The one good thing was that they had like a 2-week section where you actually were trained by Special Forces, French Foreign Legion coming, just field exercise. That was awesome. The rest of it's a book, kind of like that orange one you have over there, Bob, big orange book. And 4 months to get to that.
So remember, I mean, hazardous materials are all around us. And again, you have to take that into consideration whenever you are dealing with scene safety, because again, your safety comes first. And please, please, please don't try to be a hero. Okay? if you are aware that there is a chemical spill, don't go riding up on it, don't go into it, because that's what's considered the hot zone. You need to stay well away from the hot zone and let the proper people who's been properly trained in hazmat material to do what they're supposed to do. Because I'm here to tell you, if you're ever exposed to a hazmat material, you have to go through a decontamination process, and that's not fun. And it's just not a matter of being sprayed down with water. You gotta get scrubbed, and I mean, till you're red and almost bleeding, and think it's not fun. Okay, so if you have a hazmat type of situation, you will always park your truck upwind, uphill. Never downwind, downhill, okay? Always upwind, okay, because if it's gases and things like that, you don't want the vapors and stuff going to your area, you wanna be above that, okay? And you need to ensure that the fire department comes to your scene and you notify them of the hazmat. That's how come you have that book, so that you can notify them of exactly what you're dealing with, so that they know how to come prepared. You need to notify the proper authorities, the police department, so if they need to start an evacuation process, they can. And to secure the scene, that no one else goes into it in order to cause you more patients to contend with. And you need to do your due diligence and park where you're supposed to be parked. And you need to call additional resources if you see multiple patients that could come out being exposed. Now, I'm gonna tell you this story because I don't want you to be that person, okay? This is where scene safety plays an important role, and for you to think on your feet constantly. You have to be 2 or 3 steps ahead of what's going on. So we get called out there to the Atlanta Water Works because they've had a spill, a chemical spill of chlorine. Now, chlorine is a powder. At least they used it that way, as a powder, not like tablets, but a powder. Come in like, you know, like a yard bag of soil. Okay, that's what these suckers come in. So I'm the second unit on this scene, who arrived at the same time with the first scene, and we also had the fire department who had already gone in, unprepared, and we're parking our trucks like further back from the fire department, and we see squirrels and we see birds that are dead. And we're looking at each other like, yeah, we ain't going in there. We called the fire department for them to bring their battalion, their whole crews from across the city and go, look, we have a hazardous material, we see dead things, and guess what? There was a line of firefighters and police officers who ran into the situation, and all of them passed out before they ever got to the front door.
Wow.
It's not like it's all the powder of, you know, chlorine. It's just the fumes that was escaping from the building was coming across the walkways and stuff like that, and they just went running in like, hey, we're here to help, and
Imagine getting pulled out and then just woken up and feeling so stupid.
Okay.
You woke up just like, man.
Okay, so you're talking like stupid.
Yeah.
When I first started working at Brady, a brand new EMT with a seasoned paramedic, and we were riding to a scene of a call. It was a decapitation, car wreck, decapitation. The fire department was doing CPR. Me and my partner got out, and we kind of went around because we didn't see the entire body until after we went around the corner and we saw what was going on, and we just quietly got back into our vehicle and we took off.
What were they doing? Like trying to tape it back on? Like,
Hey, man.
Well,
in
we
the
saw
South,
chest
you only
compressions
need
on
two
the
things in life.
torso, and they weren't even doing they found the head like that way.
Freak out situation.
In the South, you only need
What was
two
the
things,
thought
WD-40 and
process?
Revlon.
I don't know.
It ain't supposed to move.
Okay.
So because, okay,
You run out of substance, no, little water,
Okay.
shake it up.
So that's basically chapter 2. Workforce safety, the well-being of you
I got a
as an
question.
EMT working in the field. Yes.
because he was decapitated, is that why y'all left? Or it was not required for y'all to be there at that point once he was?
No, we
found
left
dead?
because he was dead.
Because he
And
was
we weren't
dead.
gonna be transporting anybody.
Right, so there was no need for you to be there. Okay.
And the fire department was like, hey,
Is
where
that
you
still
going?
like a standing, thing, like?
if they're obviously
He
dead
over
like
there
that, they're not gonna do
What you
anything,
mean?
there's nothing I can do.
He trying to figure out what you doing.
Okay, so, again, my apologies. Be back at 1 o'clock here in the lab. And we're gonna be doing some scenarios, putting hands on equipment, and then we're gonna start to teach you proper lifts and things from your patient, for your patient's sake, and how to properly move people.
We're doing stair exercises.
Look, I gotta take him to the gym today. Don't
Okay, so
discourage him anymore
here's
than
my
me.
thing, okay? If you need extra credit on your test,
I'll be here tomorrow.
Oh, man.
Sure.
He about to get stuck.